And if that
Hey,
goes through, yeah, yeah.
hey, Alex, it's great to be back. John Engel here again, and we're going to talk a little bit more about my career and some of the lessons I learned. And we were just talking before we started about my experience with Progressive Insurance. So I thought that might be a fun one. Uh, I got involved with Progressive Insurance during my business school years. I got invited to do an interview. We kind of had it was the equivalent of speed dating for MBA students. So the University of Chicago rented the DoubleTree Hotel in Chicago and basically slotted recruiters into all of the suites. And then the recruiters could pick which students they were most interested in. And Progressive Insurance picked me as somebody that they were interested in. So I went to the interview, and I'm in this suite with this woman, and she's interviewing me, and she asked me, "What company do you admire the most?" And I said Coca-Cola because they sell colored sugared water around the world and make billions. And then she asked me, um, what are the biggest factors influencing the insurance industry? And I said internationalization, uh, disintermediation, which meant that the insurance companies were selling direct to consumers rather than through agents. And the third one was the internet. And I had actually picked those up by the day before. I'd looked through Progressive's website to look at things that they were talking about in their press releases. And I was able to pick up at least one of those through that research. She looked at me across the table and she said, uh, I was I was interviewing you for a job in Connecticut, but I think you really would be better suited working for my mentor. Would it be okay with you if I sent your information to my mentor? And I said, yeah, that would be great. And she sent my information to her mentor, and she happened to give me the cookie that DoubleTree gives people when they have suites. So I guess you knew you did the interview well if they gave you the cookie. Um, so I got to meet this guy, Alan Bauer. I was flown out to Cleveland to meet with Alan, and I had a requirement from my program that I had to work abroad. So my internship had to be abroad. And so I had to figure out a way to schedule things in order to get an international internship. Went to Cleveland, met with Alan. Alan asked me a bunch of questions, and I must have given him the right answers. So the head of HR took me out to lunch, and she said, "Don't worry, people, Alan pretty much rejects everyone. So, if you don't get the job, don't worry. It's okay. It's not a reflection on you." And as soon as I got back, I had a message from Progressive Insurance, and they said, "We want you, Alan wants you in Cleveland as soon as possible. Actually, he wants you to meet him in Boston." And so I went to Boston, and he had me sitting on a meeting with a large software company in Boston that they were discussing things with. And then I got to travel with him all over the US and Canada for a while, which was really interesting and cool. And at that time, I met the billionaire, Peter Lewis. So I got to fly on Peter's jet, which looked like an airliner, which was pretty awesome. And then we got down to work. And my project for my internship was I had to figure out why Progressive Insurance was a successful company so we could replicate it in other countries, which is a pretty tall task. So that involved going around and interviewing all the heads of Progressive Insurance and trying to delineate those factors that were the drivers for their success. The other thing I was supposed to do was help them analyze international acquisitions. So we analyzed a purchase of a company in France, and then we also did I actually went on the ground in Mexico City and studied the Mexican auto insurance market. And the third thing was to come up with some metrics for the like launching selling insurance on the internet. So they were trying to decide, Should they buy an insurance company in another country? Should they start selling insurance on the internet? Or should they enter the home insurance market? So those were our three ways we were thinking about driving the growth of the business. And I think at that time they were about the number 9 or 10th auto insurance company in America. Well, one day Alan comes down and he says, John, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Peter won't let us sell insurance on the internet. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Like, how could he not want to sell insurance on the internet? And Alan said, well, sometimes the website will go down and there'll be a 404 error, or page not found, page not available. And Peter doesn't want to have a channel that he promotes that customers come to and it's not available. So we can't sell insurance on the internet. It wasn't so much that he was asking me for a solution, but he was kind of stating this as a fact. And I just thought, there had to be a way. So when I had worked at the Federal Reserve, I'd worked on a Unix system, a Sun workstation we were on a Unix network. And I knew that there was a command called ping. And if you type ping and the URL actually the IP address of the machine, it'll come back and tell you I'm alive, which means the machine is working correctly. So I said to Alan, well, why don't we just ping the machine and we can know if it's unavailable, we can send a pager to our IT team. So back in those days, everybody in IT carried a pager. And he said we couldn't do that because the servers were on MCI's network, and so we couldn't ping the machines. I'm like, okay. So this is one of those interesting synchronicities that happened in my life. It was a Friday, and I was going to go to Chicago to be with my girlfriend. And in those days, we didn't have podcasts. So I was walking through this bookstore, going to the books on tape section. And out of the corner of my eye, as I was passing through the computer science section of this bookstore, I saw a book that said Spiders and Bots. Now, this was 1990. This is summer of 1997, like April 1997. And at that time, nobody knew what a spider or bot was in relation to the internet. Google hadn't been created yet, so this was brand new technology. And I thought, like, what's a spider and a bot? What's the book on the spiders doing in a computer science section? So I went over and I grabbed the book and went through this book, and I realized that 80% of the code I needed to write my ping was in this book, and that I could use the book as a starting point in order to create this tool. So I bought the book, and I bought a book on tape, and I drove to Chicago that night, and all weekend, instead of hanging out with my girlfriend, I was writing a flow chart of this program. So I was designing this program that would monitor the health of the website and tell us if the pages weren't available. And I went back on Monday morning, and my girlfriend was ready to kill me. I have to be honest. If you ever do that, Alex, your girlfriend will kill you.
Yeah, I was gonna comment. I don't think your girlfriend was too happy about you doing work on the weekend like that.
No, she was really unhappy. She's like, "What are you doing? You drove all the way to Chicago, and now you're just drawing these things I don't understand." But anyway, I did that, and I went back to Cleveland, and I showed my boss. I was super excited. Monday morning, I roll in. I've got the solution over the weekend, and I showed him my flow chart, and I said, can you give me a programmer to do this? I'm a little rusty. And he looks at me and he goes, why do you write flowcharts so weird? And I'm like, no. Like, that doesn't matter. What matters is I have the solution to our problem. And so he goes, okay, I'll give you a programmer for 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to get this done. And in 2 weeks, we had created this tool that monitored the website. It told us the download speeds of the pages. And if there was any problem with the website, it would hang up and dial a pager and send a message to our IT team so that they could quickly fix any problem that would come up. CTO of Progressive comes to see me, puts his arm around me, and he goes, John, it's too bad you built this for us. Every company in America needs this, and you just built it for us. So one of the things that happens is when you're working for a large company, you sign an agreement that says that they own any of your intellectual capital. So they owned my program that I created over the weekend. But on the other hand, they, they were quite happy with me, obviously, for solving that problem. Progressive became the first company to sell insurance on the internet. So my boss, Alan Bauer, became the father of selling insurance on the internet. Extremely successful in his career, and we're still friends to this day. It was a really cool experience to do something that impacted millions of people and how they buy insurance. So it wasn't long after we did it that Geico followed suit, and pretty soon the whole industry, today the whole industry allows you to not only buy insurance on the internet, but also self-serve. And it was tremendous for Progressive. It catapulted them to the #3 auto insurance company in America, I believe. And Alan was responsible for billions of dollars. He ultimately became the head of the entire direct business, so the #3 executive at Progressive. And my little internship had something to do with that, and it was cool. And one of the things that I learned coming out of that internship from Peter Lewis, the billionaire founder of Progressive, when I sat down and talked to him about what made Progressive a successful company, he said, John, what gets measured gets done, and what gets measured correctly gets done correctly. And then he went on to explain that most companies have one CEO and Progressive has 50 CEOs. So he said it was really important to determine the profitability of each of their markets on a monthly basis. And once they figured out how to do that, he was able to then publish those numbers so that everybody in the company could see who was responsible for the most profit. And he goes, this made it so we had 50 CEOs, not one CEO. And the innovation that came out of that continued to drive the company. Progressive was all about data. So using data effectively to make better business decisions. It was really cool to have the opportunity to work with those guys. They were great operators. And I helped invent selling insurance on the internet, so that's kind of cool. Oh, and then what I learned from Alan Bauer, who was my immediate supervisor there, he told me, John, if you want to lead an extraordinary life, you first have to have extraordinary expectations for yourself. So if you think about that internship, that was quite a lot of things to get done, right? Trying to, figuring out what makes that company successful, analyzing foreign acquisitions, and then determining how to measure the performance of the internet business. Oh, and by the way, creating a brand new monitoring tool that did that. It was a lot to do in 3 months, but like Alan said, if you want to lead an extraordinary life, you have to first have extraordinary expectations. So if you're not pushing yourself and you don't have objectives that are unreasonable, then you're, what are you doing? Right?
Right. I mean, caveat to that, if you have extraordinary expectations for yourself, but you just cannot meet them, I suppose there is some caveat and caution to that, because saying, I'm going to be an astronaut, and then you are just, either you never do any of the needed work, or perhaps you're just one of those people who just could not be an astronaut, and then you beat yourself up over that. So, we'll caveat on that regard, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe you don't end up becoming an astronaut, but you work for NASA,
I mean, there's that. So,
right? So I always think it's a good idea. I've had, it's funny because I interview lots of people. That's part of what I do now, and I evaluate people. And one of the questions that I ask people is, what's the biggest mistake you made, and what did you learn from it? And if people can't give me a mistake, then there's one of two things. Either they're completely not self-aware, or they've never taken a risk. Either one of those is disqualifying in my opinion. So I've taken a lot of risks. Sometimes I've taken risks that are, probably a little bit crazy, but I've taken a lot of risks. And even if I haven't succeeded at the thing that I took the risk on, I gave it a shot. I found out what I couldn't do, like, and usually if you're shooting for the stars, since we're talking about NASA, you're shooting for the stars and you land in Cape Canaveral, it's okay.
hey, yeah, it's a certain place that's definitely not bad to be at. And
Yeah. I found that in most of I've mentored thousands of people at this point. If you can't do exactly the thing you want, you can certainly get in the neighborhood. And I think a lot of times people will create these boxes for themselves about what they think is possible for themselves. I remember one young woman I was mentoring, and she insisted that she really wanted to work for the Blackhawks. So she was a big fan of the Blackhawks. She wanted to work for the Blackhawk organization. And she thought it was impossible. She's like, John, there's no way I can get a job in working for the Blackhawks. And I said, okay, well, why do you want to work for the Blackhawks? And she said, well, my best friend's dad works in marketing for the Blackhawks, and I really admire him, and I'd like to work in the Blackhawks. And I said, okay, wait a second. Your best friend's dad works for the Blackhawks. You don't think you could get some job at the Blackhawks? I mean, maybe you're going to be sweeping the floor or, selling tickets or something, but I bet I will guarantee you that your best friend's dad will help you get a job at the Blackhawks. You just need to ask him. A lot of people don't get what they want in life because they don't ask the people who love and trust them to help them, or they make it too hard for people to help them. So I remember when I was first working with this young lady, she said that she wanted to work in marketing. That's it. And it took a while for me to get to the Blackhawks, to get to that point. And, if you tell people, hey, I want to work in marketing, that's way too broad. You've got to be specific. This summer, there was a student who posted that she was on LinkedIn that she was graduating and she needed a job. And that's pretty much it. I'm graduating, I need a job, help me. And I immediately contacted her and I said, that's too vague. It makes it really hard for anybody to help you. Let's try to be a lot more specific here. Where do you want to live? What interests you? What do you do in your free time? Where are your passions? And through that, we were able to figure out that she wanted to live in New York City, that she was really interested in running, and that she had worked in youth organizations before. So we were able to find a nonprofit that worked with young people and encouraged them to run. And she didn't get that job right away. She ended up getting another job, but she stayed in touch with them. And she contacted me maybe 2 weeks ago to say that she got a job offer from the organization we had identified for her. And she had another job offer from another company. And, this was 6 months from posting on LinkedIn, I need a job. So there's a an important factor in focus. Focus, find a focus, because the people that know, love, and trust you, they know lots of people. But if you just say vaguely that you need something, at best they're going to give you a, a vague hand in helping get what you want. But if you're very specific about what you want, then it becomes a whole lot easier, because I know who in my network to reach out to help you. I know how to teach you the things that'll lead you to be more successful.
Yeah. So then, knowing what you want specifically, knowing who to ask, and I suppose having people who you can ask in general. And
Well,
then I guess accepting that maybe you won't quite reach your goal, but if you get close.
yeah, I think it was Morgan Freeman who said, if you hang around the barbershop long enough, you're going to get your hair cut. So, like, so if you're in the business of being an actor, and you keep doing it long enough, eventually somebody's going to pick you up as a character for a movie. If you want to be an astronaut and you don't quite make being an astronaut, you can probably be a mission specialist at NASA,
Yeah.
because you've put in that time and effort and you know enough about it, right?
Yeah.
You have to everyone has 250 people that would go to their wedding or funeral on average. And each of those people have 250 people. So you, Alex, have an army of at least 62,500 people who will bring you whatever you want in your life. And with social media, that might even be way bigger, right? So I have 20,000 people on social media. Each of them on average have 250 people, right? So we're talking about 600,000 people. So there's 600,000 people that if I ask for something, I can probably get it if it's reasonable.
Yeah. Sometimes I guess you don't really realize what kind of resources you have access to until you step back and actually take an inventory of it.
Right? And then it's like, well, why wouldn't I try? The other thing is, when I was 19 years old, I was doing a project for one of my professors where we were surveying the leaders of the AFL-CIO. Okay, so I had to call these union leaders, and I had to take them through an interview. And one day I come into work and my boss smiles and he hands me my call for that day, and it's Julius Irving. So you may not know Julius Irving, Alex, but
No, I do not.
Julius Irving was the Michael Jordan or the LeBron James of his time. They called him Dr. J, and he was the most famous basketball player in the world. And I got to call him and ask him questions. Right? So I'm 19 years old. I'm on the phone with Dr. J, and I'm asking him questions. And I learned in that moment that I can call anyone in the world as long as I can figure out a way to be of service to that person.
Yeah. This harkens back to the previous lesson you had said. People will generally give you some of their time if you give them some of yours.
Exactly. Yep. Just respect. If you respect their time, they'll give you your time. I was quite honored when you asked me to participate in your podcast, because you're giving me an opportunity to reach more people and to help more people, and for me that's a big honor and something that's really important to me, and so I want to thank you for that. And then I hope you realize that there's a ton of people out there just like me that feel the same way.
I just need to find them.
You just need to ask. People will say yes. Not everyone,
Not everyone.
right? Not everyone, but if you ask enough people, you'll find a yes.
Yeah, so that's a lesson that I'm going to just say right out now. Sometimes you're going to get rejected.
100%. I tell my team our numbers are 240, 45. So we need to have 240 prospects to get 40 meetings to get 5 total rock stars for our client. So 240, 45. If we hit those numbers, then I know I'm going to have the end results, plus or minus one candidate typically.
Hmm. That's actually, yeah, that's something I'll have to keep in mind for the future, whatever I do. Hopefully,
Yeah.
and indeed, I do hope that someone gets a lesson out of this. I mean, it seems like quite a lot of people, and we end up with it 240 people condensed down to only five potential candidates. It seems a bit pathetic, and you're probably going to deal with quite a bit of rejection and disappointment. I guess at the end of the day,
You make a ton of money. So it's
I'll make a ton of money.
I've had to really work for a living, Alex. I know what really hard work is like. This is not really hard work. If you think about it, like there's not a whole lot of psychological pain for me to send an email and that person doesn't respond. Doesn't really hurt my ego. So they may not have even seen it.
Yeah,
And then the people that I talk to and get on the phone, typically none of them actually reject. I have to reject them at that point. Um, and I think the hardest part of my job is actually rejecting the 25 people that we can't give jobs to. I feel bad about that. But I try to make sure that I help each one of them. And so if they get on the phone with me, I want to make sure that they've gotten value out of it.
yeah, make everything count.
Exactly. And you know what? It's great that I know those numbers because I can give you with a pretty good degree, pretty close to accuracy, usually within a week. I can tell you how long it'll take me to fill a job. And if you need this person faster, so it's typically 6 weeks. To do that whole process takes about 6 weeks. I can speed that up though. And so I can hire people faster if you need it. I remember I had a client once, and I'd even hate to bring this up because it's a little bit of an unrealistic expectation. But I had a guy call me from London on Thanksgiving, and he said, "John, I need the 7 best big data people in e-commerce in my office in 3 weeks." And 3 weeks later, he wanted 5. I gave him 7.
Oh, a little overkill, but
Yeah, it was overkill because I just wanted to make sure. Like with 3 weeks, you have to hustle. But yeah, he was, and then for him, it was a huge savings because he didn't have to look at people who weren't qualified. He just had to pick from the very best people who are available. And I've had people hire 2 or 3 people from a list because they didn't want to have to, basically they had other open jobs that they didn't want to have to go through the pain of trying to find somebody. And if I had 3 really good candidates out of a list of 5, why not hire all of them? Which is good for me. So if I do a really good job, Alex, I make a lot of money. If I do a good job, I make a nice income. If they're hiring 3 off a list, that's like drug dealing money. Like that's like ridiculous.
yeah, yeah. Well then, uh, all right. Well, this is an awkward pause. I'm probably gonna have to edit out.
That's okay, brother. I think I think Craig Ferguson actually always bakes in an awkward pause. I'll tell you something else that I'm really happy about when it comes to my business. When I had my business in the beginning, I made the mistake of thinking that I had to do everything myself so that I would get the quality that my clients needed. And that was a mistake because you can only do so much as a human, right? You're going to hit a wall at a certain point. And I couldn't scale that if it was just me. I could, like no matter how good I am, I can only do so much. And I came to the realization that, even Michael Jordan has a team, Michael Jordan has a coach. Like, why do I think that I can go through the world and not have a team or not have a coach? Um, and there was a big change in my business when I started to think about doing it as a team. And at first, my clients were a little bit concerned. They're like, John, we know you, we trust you. Don't necessarily want other people to be doing any of the work related to our projects. And I told them, look, um, if I'm signing the contract, then I'm guaranteeing the quality of the work. And so that's what I've done for years now, is probably for the going on about 10 years. I have everything I do today as a team because, with a team, I'm able to hire somebody on the other side of the world and they can work when I'm sleeping. So we can get things done faster. And I have the ability to leverage the things that they know about that I may not have had the opportunity to experience. And so I'm a huge believer in the importance of building a team. And when you build that team, to truly care about the people. So if you don't care about a person, don't hire them. Truly care about the people on your team. Your team should be, uh, your friends. They should be people that you admire, respect. I remember early in my business, I tried to keep, friendships and business separate. And my friends kept coming to me and begging me to help them. And so I'm like, okay, well, like this one time I'll do, and then it hit me and I realized that like I become friends with my clients. Why would I deny my friends the opportunity of working with me? And so now I have, one of my best friends is one of my best clients right now. Another one of my best friends is my new business partner. Um, I think people make the mistake of thinking that they can't do business with their friends. Actually, your friends, like what could be a better way to live than to be spending time with the people that you know, love, and trust, right? So like why not do business with them?
Yeah. Something you haven't even thought of is that you might end up, and I guess it makes sense when you're working with people, eventually you get to become, at the very least, acquaintances that become friends with someone. I would have never thought of that.
Yeah, I am so passionate about the people that I serve because I understand, like, I eat because of these people, right? Like, I am passionate about these people. So whatever problem that they have, it's my problem, right? I take on any problem, anything that they're struggling with, I try to help them solve. I want to be everybody's first phone call.
Yeah, it's quite a state to be in.
Yeah,
First one who they start relying on.
exactly. I want to be the person that when you have a problem, Alex, you're like, I gotta call John. Because maybe John can't tell me the exact answer to this problem, but he'll find somebody. Like, you know. So I
Yeah,
want to be I want to be everybody's first phone call. That's one of my missions in life.
yeah. And then I have to be editing a little bit of silence out of here because there's maybe a bit too much excessive stuff because I think we're both running a little bit short of stuff to talk about.
There's actually there's so much to talk about that the thing is, at what is the most useful thing for the people that you think are going to listen? Like, what do they care about the most? Is it getting a job? Is it succeeding in school? Is it building and creating a business?
Huh.
Is it working internationally?
I'd have to figure that my audience is probably going to be there and about my age. So either people who are finishing up, honestly, probably either finishing at college or in college or looking to set up their future. I mean, realistically, I would like it if these are lessons which are applicable to anyone. And quite frankly, I think they are. But I guess probably someone who's looking up to get some lessons, take some examples, some experience, and get their life ready, get their life set up.
You know, along those lines, I want to. This is a very personal thing, Alex. But when I graduated from university, I was a very good student. So up to that point, I had figured out how to play the game, and I was a very good student. And I was recognized for being a very good student in Iowa, and I knew how to get an A in an academic class. I knew how to ingratiate myself with my professors, to the point where they relied on me. I knew how to play the game. When I graduated, I did not know how to find a job because every job that I'd gotten in my life, I had gotten through relationships. And so I had this point when I struggled a bit with wondering about what my future would be, to transition from academics to business and life, and it caused me a lot of anxiety. And I remember going to visit to some of my professors. Like, I went to visit my Buddhist professor. I'd taken a class in Chinese religions and Buddhism, and I thought, that guy, like, that guy's gonna really know how to put this into perspective. And he's like, John, just chill. Like, just go do whatever you want to do. Like, you're young, you've got no kids, you don't really have a lot of financial obligations. Just go do something you think would be fun. And I also remember one of my best friends giving me a book called The Tao of Pooh, and it was about explaining Taoism through Winnie the Pooh.
Makes sense.
And then later, the same friend sent me a book about, like, how to survive any calamity. And I think she was just like teasing me in a way. Like, I was like 101 disasters and how to survive them. Because I just overblew everything. I just thought that, I was not self-aware enough to realize that, life is full of changes, and you have to flow with them, with those changes. You have to allow yourself to grow and do different things, and explore. And even though you might be successful in one thing, you know what now you have a new thing to learn. So try to take, they call it the growth mindset now. And I'm a firm believer in this notion of, do you, one of my friends actually has a business called Train Ugly. And it's about like go do things that you're not good at so that you'll actually learn and grow. Too often we're concerned with our ego and our identity around things. And I hope like anyone who's 22 years old getting out of college and worried about their future, I hope you realize like you have this incredible gift of time, and there's huge adventures await you, and you can go from doing almost anything to working for some of the smartest people in the world in a year or two.
Yeah.
I was an unemployed construction worker on a Greyhound bus with $450, and a year later, people were borrowing $7 billion based on what I said. Like
Yeah, I
it's
remember.
crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Like life is full of all this crazy stuff that you can do if you just
You
if you
set your mind
just
to it.
yeah. I remember once I went ocean kayaking with some friends of mine. And when we were in the harbor, I was doing really well, and I was like really confident. I'm out there like ocean kayak. I'm like, cool. I'm gonna go on the ocean and I'm gonna kayak, and wow, And so we go out on the ocean, and I keep flipping over, like I'm constantly flipping over. I get up on the kayak, I flip over. I get up on the kayak, I flip over. And about 20 minutes in this, the guide comes over to me and she smiles and she says, John, you're trying to sit still on the ocean. You can't sit still on the ocean. That's not gonna work. You gotta move with the waves, so you gotta be able to adjust as a wave comes, and that's gonna keep you from flipping over. If you just sit there and you try to be static and sit in one place, it's never gonna work. And so I had to learn to go with the flow of the ocean. And I think that people need to learn to go with the flow of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Normally, I've heard it, more like rivers and stuff, but that is an analogy I have indeed heard. You gotta go with the flow. If you just sit there, well, if life's a river and you decide you're gonna be a rock,
Mhm.
well, what exactly does water do when it flows over a rock forever?
It
It's gonna
wears
get
it
worn.
down. It wears it down. Even a rock, even a rock will get worn down with enough time and water.
Yes, everything. Doesn't matter what you do, but time is eventually gonna win.
Yeah, time is either your friend or time is your enemy, depending on your perspective.
So then, you can either have an enemy or you can have a friend, and it's a
Yeah,
matter of perspective.
right. Exactly. Because time's always gonna, like it's so funny now that I'm an old dude. Yeah, I remember talking to my dad's friends when I was a young man, and they told me, John, it's you never get old in your mind. You only get your body just gets old. And now that I'm an old man and I'm looking back on life, I'm like, a lot of it feels like it happened yesterday. Like things just happen super fast. So don't wait. Like don't wait. I think if you wait and you don't try and you're just uh you're like someday I'm gonna do this. No, like do it. Like if you can anything that you can do immediately. Um, because everything there's one of my favorite quotes is from Henry David Thoreau, and it's kind of funny because he was at Walden Pond hanging out in a cabin by himself when he wrote this line, but it's for me it's profound. He said, you can't waste time without injuring eternity, which basically means whatever you do today is shaping the person that you can become in the future. And so don't waste time today, because if you waste time today, you're limiting your future self.
Yeah. I like to think of it as laying down a foundation. So you keep laying that foundation down, maybe building off of it. And that's, I think I've already screwed the analogy a little bit. But anyway, you laid out
I'm
your
with you.
foundation.
I'm with you. It's yeah.
You're constantly building onto that house of life you call. Or,
Yeah, and put yourself in the room, like build your foundation where you want your house to be, if that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense actually quite a bit.
I remember talking to a guy once, and he said to me, John, I spent all this time going to these networking events and they weren't working for me. This guy was a copywriter, and he would go to these events, and there would be plumbers or other people there, and everybody thought he was an attorney because he was a copywriter. So he was getting no business, and it was completely a waste of time for him. And he said, then I found this organization called the American Marketing Association, and my clients are people who are marketers who need somebody to help them write marketing copy. And so they immediately knew what a copywriter was, and he volunteered with the association to be the copywriter for the association, and he wrote their emails to their members. He's like, you guys really should have an email newsletter to your members with useful information in it. So if you tell people that they need to do something, if you volunteer to then do it, they will often let you do it. So they let him do it, and he ended up getting a bunch of clients through that because they could see examples of his work. And then he ended up becoming the new writer for the guerrilla marketing series, because somebody who had read his emails was like, this guy could write these books. And he said it changed his life just by finding the right room to be in. Right? So build your foundation with the right people. If you want to be, my cousin wants to be a Broadway actress, and she's very talented. She spent, 14 years of her life as an actress, and probably 6 years of her life taking singing lessons. And I said, it's great. You can do all those things, and you're very skilled, but you've got to get out to New York. You've got to get seen by the people who can cast you. You've got to, you can't take internships in Sioux City and expect that you'll be a Broadway actress someday. If you want to be a Broadway actress, you've got to get off Broadway. You've got to get, as close as you can get to the people. So build your foundation where the people that can hire you can see you.
It's all well and good if you happen to be a diamond in the rough, but if no one's looking for diamonds.
Exactly. Or if you're in the rough, people may miss you, right? So you've got to polish your skills every day. You've got to go after the thing you want every day, and you have to get known by the right people. And the cool thing about today's world that we live in is that it's super easy to become friends with anyone. It's super easy to connect with people because there's not really a cost. There's a cost of time to have a Zoom meeting with somebody, but it's never been cheaper to be able to build relationships with other people than it has been, today with the technologies available to us.
For all the wonders and horrors our technology has given us, at least the ability to contact someone who, in your case, you're about 6 hours away from me.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So we have this opportunity to hang out, and I'm 6 hours away. And then, this presumably will be shared with people, and some of those people might be in Nigeria or Afghanistan or Haiti or wherever.
Or
And they
they're
have,
in 2030.
yeah, or 2030. Hello, people in the future. So it's pretty cool. And I think, take every advantage possible of that.
Yep. A lot of lessons you can, I'd say probably the biggest one that I personally can take
Uh-huh.
is to make use of connections. Because sociability has never been quite my strong suit. And so, as I'm sure you can understand,
Yeah.
connectivity has never quite been my strong suit.
Yes, but you know what's beautiful, Alex, is you're doing this.
Yeah.
When I was your age, I was the biggest geek on the planet. I spent all my time in dark rooms writing computer programs to do mathematical modeling. Like that's how I spent my time. And I remember one of my bosses coming to me and saying, John, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how hard you work, it doesn't even matter how good your work is. The only thing that matters is what you can get people to believe. And I realized that there's this whole piece of social engineering that's necessary in life to get the things you want. And that's when I got involved with Toastmasters. So I would encourage anyone to do Toastmasters or Dale Carnegie if they could, to start to learn those elements of social engineering.
Uh, you know, I know what Toastmasters. You want to actually go ahead and explain that so that anyone in the future can know what those are and know to make use of them. Since,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, people in 2030. So, Toastmasters is the largest public speaking and leadership organization in the world. There's about 300,000 Toastmasters that are active at the moment, in every country in the world. Uh, there are millions and millions of people who are former Toastmasters. So, uh, they've been senators, they've been newscasters on national television. Uh, Toastmasters gives you an audience, and it teaches you how to run a meeting, and it gives you the opportunity to really work on those technical skills that enable you to be an effective communicator. And it's incredibly inexpensive. Anyone can afford a Toastmasters membership. They tend to be at different times of the week. So usually there's one available to you, even if you work. And if you work in a job that takes a lot of your time and you're not able to get away, you can start a Toastmasters club in the organization that you're in, and often that will give you visibility. The great thing about Toastmasters is one of the things that I used to envy about people who smoke. Although I've never smoked, don't want to smoke, but the thing that I envied about people who smoked is that they got to meet people from other parts of the organization because they would go to their smoke break and they would meet people from the different departments. In Toastmasters, you have the opportunity to meet people from all kinds of different organizations or within your organization. I remember meeting a vice president at JP Morgan uh, when I was a very young man because I went to their Toastmasters meetings. So, you can be exposed to a lot of people and improve your communication skills, and you'll make a lot of friends just through speeches because you learn a lot about people through their speeches. So that's Toastmasters. Now, there's another program that's called Dale Carnegie. And Dale Carnegie was a writer that was hired by the YMCA in New York to help people during the Depression find jobs. So it was incredibly difficult time for people to find work during the Depression. And Dale Carnegie had this program at the YMCA where he helped people learn how to network and find jobs. Dale Carnegie would collect advice from all of his students on these 3x5 cards. And then he eventually turned it into a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which I highly, highly recommend. Even though it's old, the examples are older, the content is timeless. And Dale Carnegie created a course to teach people how to be effective salespeople, effective communicators. People all over the world have attended it. Warren Buffett says that if you learn how to speak effectively, you can increase your income by 50% over the course of your life. He cites Dale Carnegie as the place where he learned to speak effectively. But I would say either Toastmasters or Dale Carnegie, either one of those choices would be a tremendous asset to your life. If you look at the leaders of any industry, those leaders are really good speakers or really good writers or both. And if you have that skill, it's also very valuable. People have paid me a lot of money to, I've written CEOs letters to their employees. I've written the chairman's speech to an association. I've written CEOs speeches to organizations, and you can make a lot of money doing that, and you could be anywhere in the world where you're doing it. So I really encourage you, if you're at a university with writing laboratories, use them as much as you can. If you can find a Toastmasters group, go to at least one Toastmasters group a week, and you'll really find that it'll change your life in all kinds of unexpected ways. My personality is radically different than it was when I was 23 years old because of the confidence that I gained in communicating with other people through being part of these organizations. And it's certainly been worth a lot of money to me in my life.
That's good to hear. And I do hope then that someone will make use of resources you have, well, I not necessarily made available, but informed that they are available. I do hope that if you are a person who is going to make use of these resources, Toastmaster, and it's Dale Carnegie or
Yeah, it's Dale Carnegie.
yeah.
So Dale Carnegie and Toastmasters are two programs that you can take outside of school that, and some Toastmasters groups are actually part of universities and colleges. So you may be able to join a group there as well, that are just going to help you be more effective as a professional. And if I may, I'd like to recommend particularly some books that are also very valuable in kind of laying a foundation of things that are going to help you succeed in life. I like to think of books like new software updates, right? Right. So there's some books that if you read them, it will enable you to come up with concepts or solutions that you wouldn't have been able to if you hadn't been exposed to that book. One that I give, probably the book that I give the most as a gift to people, is a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. Robert Cialdini is a professor at the University of Arizona. He's an extremely successful business person. What Robert Cialdini did was he studied the best influencers in the world. So the best used car salesmen, the best, the Hare Krishnas, kind of like every influencer you can imagine, he studied, and he wrote a book that gives very specific techniques that these salespeople use. He explains the psychology about why that technique works. And then he gives you an example of how to apply that technique. And that one book, I probably use something that I learned from it at least once a week. So can't recommend Influence by Robert Cialdini highly enough. Another one is Persuasion, also written by Robert Cialdini. Persuasion is what you do before you make a sale in order to kind of soften the ground, make it more likely that you're going to be successful. So persuasion and influence. There's a book called Nudge by a man named Richard Thaler. Nudge is about decision architecture. So Thaler says that he can get kids to choose carrots over French fries, and then he proved it by the way that he designed a lunch line.
Hmm.
So it's fascinating, fascinating. If Alex, have you ever lost your keys or your phone or your
Yes, a few
something like
times.
that? A few times? Yeah. Have you ever left your ATM card at the ATM?
I have not done that yet.
There's a reason why you haven't done that, Alex. People used to do that all the time, but Thaler came along and designed a process that made it unlikely for people to leave their card. What does the ATM machine do? What does the ATM machine do first? Give you the cash or give you your card back?
Your card.
Exactly. Exactly. They give you your card before they give you the cash. So you're not going to leave without your card.
All
If they
right.
gave, if they gave you the cash before the card, you might leave.
And it seems like just common sense, but there's some things that you never really consider, I suppose, until it actually comes up.
Yeah. There's a
So,
whole bunch of stuff like that in this book.
so one thing I'm going to do for I I say my parents have texted me. They are going to
Ah,
come and pick me up shortly. So
okay.
unfortunately, I cannot exactly say no to my mother.
I know your mother. I know
So
that.
what I'm going to do for anyone who has watched to the end of this, uh, in the description, there are some resources. So I'm going to make sure there's links to Toastmaster, to Dale Carnegie. I'm going to listen uh, at like an Amazon bookstore or something. I'll go ahead and leave links to the books he recommended. Uh, Make sure that those resources are available. So hopefully someone, maybe that someone is you watching right now, makes use and gets something out of it. So uh, yes, thank you, John. I wonder if I'll be seeing you again in the future. Hopefully.
Absolutely, Alex. Anytime you need something, you can just call me. I'm there for you.
Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share and to help other people.
All right.
Ciao.